Why has Germany, long slumbering like a hibernating bear, suddenly awakened its military giant?
Imagine the shocking reality: after hiding its NATO pledge to spend just 2% of GDP on defense for the first time in decades, Berlin now unleashes plans for the biggest army buildup in 70 years.
Not just strength, supremacy as Europe's mightiest force against an ever-looming Russian shadow.
The air thickens with the scent of diesel fumes and cold steel, boots crunching on frost-kissed earth.
Is this the defiant roar of a nation refusing to be a doormat? Or the whispered harp why of inevitable clash?
Feel the tremble of uncertainty as Europe teeters on a razor's edge. First, Germany navigated the post-Cold War with timid caution, slashing forces from 500,000 warriors to a mere 180,000. Billions melted away from arsenals, tanks dwindling from over 6,000 to 323 lone beasts, cannons roaring no more. Black brooms mocked their spots as machine guns in NATO drills, a humiliating reminder of stripped bones. Then, Ukraine's invasion in 2022 shattered the calm, thrusting Germany as Europe's top backer of Kyiv, surging aid past $55 billion. Under Olaf Scholz, focus stayed on Ukraine, but now Friedrich Merz grabs the reins, pivoting to forge a Bundeswehr braced for Russia.
European chieftains warn a 5-year window for attacks. But is Russia's wounded economy really crumbling, or poised to strike west if Ukraine falls? What if their shadowy tactics humiliate NATO's boasts?
The chill of disbelief creeps in. Heir to defeat, post-World War II Germany lay defenseless, cleaved into Soviet East and Western West.
By 1955, NATO embraced West Germany, sparking rebirth of arms. Laws revived conscription for men 18 to 45, weaving 12 armored and infantry divisions into 3 corps under NATO's banner.
A territorial army guarded home fronts. U.S. gear flooded in M47 Patton tanks rumbling onto shores.
Industrial flames reignited.
By the Berlin Wall's crash in 1989, Germany soared as NATO's central pillar, troops swelling to 500,000. Yet peace's false dawn brought downsizing, spending plummeting from 4.9% of GDP in 1963 to 1.1% in 2005. The sting of inadequacy grew, black-painted brooms waving instead of guns in 2014 drills. Ukraine's fire in 2022 reshaped the board, painting Germany as Europe's chief donor, over $46 billion in military might.
Scholz channeled energies to Ukraine. But Merz, enthroned in 2025, shifts gaze to Russian perils. Leaders like Boris Pistorius and Jens Stoltenberg bark of imminent threats. Heat echoes of tanks, the acrid smoke of sanctions. Does this erode Russia, or steel it for westward turns? Twist awaits. If Ukraine bends, could Moscow's gaze land on NATO flanks, shattering illusions of safety? Germany's cardinal roles unfold on eastern fronts, through Belarus into Poland, the Baltics, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, or Ukraine's path to Moldova. In 2 key theaters, Germany's fate intertwines. Baltics first, the 45th Armored Brigade beds in Lithuania since World War II's end, a first long-term overseas stand. By 2027, 5,000 troops swell at Ruduke training grounds in Rukla, civilians in tow. Rent-free lands, weapons caches, schools for families, a pact ensuring presence.
Heavy boots pound the earth, the metallic tang of munitions heavy in the air.
Poland next, a mere 357 miles from Belarus's edge, Germany dances on the cusp. Rapid Russian surges through Poland would crown Germany next.
Edward Lucas of the Royal United Services Institute predicts Germany's land dominance on Europe's mainland, firepower roaring from German and Polish lines, bolstered by U.S. giants.
Sensory barrage, the thunder of engines, sweat-damp uniforms clinging to skin. Can Europe's bulwark hold, or will Russia's cunning humiliate this foresight? Unfold the paradox: are trumpeted threats bravado, or the prelude to a continental upheaval? Pauses linger. What hidden detours alter alliances? Fear of Russian fangs drives one thrust of Germany's rearmament, coupled with the imperative to repel. Scholz's iconic Zeitenwende speech, Germany's turning point in 2022, defied Putin, pledging every NATO inch defended, birthing a cutting-edge Bundeswehr. Fruits, a $116 billion procurement vault, top donor status to Ukraine, hitting 2% GDP defense spend. Donald Trump's mantra pierced: America won't foot Europe's bill. Disdain for laggards echoed, threats of abandoning Article 5 aid.
Demand soared to 5% GDP spend by 2035 to 3.5% on arms, 1.5% on dual realms like logistics and cyber shields. Europe's awakening dawned, ditching over-reliance on U.S. largesse. Atlanticist Scholz urged U.S. independence, sparking debt ceiling reforms. This 2009 cap, at 0.35% structural deficit, choked defense borrows. Parliament agreed, reforms slashing restraints just before Mers's ascent in 2025. Mers sprints. Unshackling finances for Europe's strongest army. Billions pour into Leopard 2 tanks, a world champion with over 20 nations, artillery, jets, warships. Hear the forges hiss, feel steel plate vibrations. Sensory onslaught, the roar of turbines, ozone scent of electronics. Humiliation looms for foes as budgets swell, Trump's ego bruised, or Europe's rite of passage? Twist whispers, beyond threats, fiscal shifts unveil self-reliance, but at what hidden tin cost? What if America's indifference ignites more than Europe bargains? Cliffhanger fade, the rumble grows. Is this arsenal's birth a shield against shadows, or the spark for a storm no one courts? Feel the weight. What fate hangs if Mers's vision clashes with Russia's unyielding resolve? The edge sharpens essences of fear, pride, the metallic clank of rebirth weaving Europe's tapestry. Await the echo, for Germany's dragon breathes anew, and the world's glare intensifies. What uncharted reckonings hide in this shift? In a world where echoes of old wars linger like fog over silent fields, Germany's military once stood as a Cold War giant, boasting 500,000 troops and arsenals that shaped Europe. Yet, peace brought cuts so deep, its forces dwindled to a shadow, begging the question, is this the spark that reignites a forgotten firestorm? Imagining the sting of humiliation. Picture NATO drills in 2014, where German troop carriers rolled out painted broomsticks, instead of real guns. The air thick with embarrassment, the scent of defeat clinging like mud on boots. This was Germany's nadir, its army gutted to 180,000 from 500,000. Battle tanks crashed from 6,684 to 323. Infantry vehicles slumped to 395. Howitzers thundered no more, dropping from 3,214 to 130. Luftwaffe jets roared out, their fleet halved from 553 to 205. Spending sagged from 4.9% of GDP in 1963 to a mere 1.1% by 2005. Could a superpower fall so low? And then, the ground trembled. Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine shattered the quiet. Fear spread like wildfire, the screams of distant battles reaching Europe's ears. No more emptiness. Germany's rebirth began, its aid pouring over $55.5 billion since 2022, humanitarian streams, financial floods, military might at $46 billion. Chancellor Olaf Scholz armed Ukraine fiercely. But whispers of war grew louder. Under Friedrich Merz, since 2025, the shift hit, rebuild for NATO claw against Russia. European leaders warned. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte and Defense Minister Boris Pistorius echoed, Russia might strike within 5 years. We're all on the eastern flank now, Rutte declared. The chill of reality cut deep. Experts debated Russia's economy crumbling? Sanctions choking? Yet, if it can't crush Ukraine now, how invade NATO with its Article 5 shield and erect economy? Skeptics sneered at the panic. Moot argument, they scoffed. Imagine the arrogance evaporating as analysts from the Center for Analysis and Strategies in Europe and Bruegel think tank countered, Russia's war machine endures, waging battle for 2 to 5 more years. Victorious in Ukraine, it might surge west. Dread mounts, will Germany gamble? Awakening the beast roared onward. Rostov cautioned against underestimating Russia's resolve. Experts like Edward Arnold from the Royal United Services Institute saw Germany anchoring Poland's defense, supplying Europe's land power heft. Threats loomed in 3 paths, via Belarus into Poland, the Baltics, or Ukraine into Moldova. Germany's 45th Armored Brigade now guards Lithuania, first long-term foreign deployment since World War II. By 2027, 5,000 soldiers and 200 civilians settle in Ruklos, a bilateral deal, free land, schools for families. The crunch of tanks on training grounds, the hum of engines, the weight of gear shouldering destiny.
Poland's border? Just 357 miles to Belarus, Germany's next target if Russia breaks through.
Interest commands support for allies in self-defense.
Who dares doubt this shield? Twist, Trump's America pulls back, exposing Europe's vulnerability. Shockwave hit harder. Donald Trump's disdain for NATO slackers echoed loud. He mocked presidents like Biden's era of unconditional aid. No more bankrolling Europe, he thundered. Zelensky's tense White House clash sealed it, US might abandon Article 5. Europe jolted awake.
Commitments surged to 5% of GDP by 2035, 3.5% for hard arms, 1.5% for logistics, cyber shields.
Not Trump-pleasing, sovereignty mattered. Scholz, an Atlanticist fearing US indifference, pushed reforms. We need independence, he pleaded.
Breaking Germany's debt-break constitution capped deficits at 0.35% of GDP, freed billions for defense.
Bundestag agreed in March 2025, weeks before Merz. Limits erased for military. Merz seized the reins, envisioning Europe's strongest army. Reforms unleashed, tanks, jets, ships by the hundreds of billions.
The Leopard 2 tank reigns supreme, exported worldwide.
Chancellors pledged resolve, defend every NATO inch. ZEF Settenven's speech in 2022 warned Putin, birthing a $116 billion procurement fund. Were threats bluff? Or did birth pangs of war approach? Unknown paths unfold. Germany's slumber ends.
From humble beginnings post-World War II demilitarized, divided to NATO rebirth in 1955, the Bundeswehr rose with conscription and U.S. tools like M47 Patton tanks. Cold War peaks saw 500,000 troops guarding Europe.
Then downsizing shrank it. But 2022's roar revived the Phoenix. Armed brigades deploy, funds flow endlessly. Peril lurks, if Russia overcomes Ukraine, westward eyes might fix on NATO. Germany's gambles, global aid king, yet self-arming for apocalypse. Whispers ask, will Europe's giant crush aggressors, or ignite new horror?
The horns of war sound, dimly.
Yet, dawn breaks on fortified lines. No turning back. From the last segment, we questioned if Russia's economic struggles could bar an invasion of NATO, yet highlighted the warning not to dismiss their potential aggression. Now, we probe the probable battlegrounds for such a clash. Did you know that Germany hasn't stationed a full combat brigade abroad since the horrors of World War II? This startling shift, their 45th Armored Brigade entrenched in Lithuania, signals Europe's fragile peace cracking under pressure. Feel the icy dread creeping in as old enmities stir. Can this hibernating strength halt Russia's advance, or will the cold winds of conflict engulf the continent, crushing hopes beneath armored heels and echoing gunfire? Financial analysts warn Russia's economy could endure the grind in Ukraine for 2 to 5 grueling years longer. Like the Center for Analysis and Strategies in Europe and the Belgian think tank Bruegel. So, if Moscow claims victory there, its war-tuned machine might swivel westward. Smell the acrid smoke of unresolved battles lingering in the air. How could a broken economy fuel conquest against an alliance like NATO? Under the ironclad Article 5 Defense Pact. That's why Berlin refuses to gamble. There are 3 main paths for a Russian strike: through ally Belarus into Poland, into the Baltic nations of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, or via Ukraine into Moldova. For the first 2, Germany stands towers central. On the Baltic edge, Germany deploys its 45th Armored Brigade in Lithuania permanently. A milestone since World War II. The first long-term foreign combat unit placement. It will swell to 5,000 soldiers and 200 civilians by 2027's end. Hear the sharp bark of command slicing through the chill. Troops dig in at the Rudninkai military training ground in Rukla. A joint deal grants the Bundeswehr free Lithuanian soil for bases, weapon storage, and ammo caches. Plus, German schools and kindergartens for military kin. Imagine the tactile grip of frost on handlebars, the earthy tang of disturbed Baltic soil underfoot, blending with the metallic hum of engines idling in readiness. Then, for Poland's flanks, Germany stands just 357 miles from Belarus at their closest shared border. Should Russia surge through Poland swift and fierce, Germany looms next in the crosshairs. Feel the pulse of urgency racing like a heartbeat through vein-like roads. Thus, bolstering Warsaw while fortifying homelines becomes paramount. Cooling the sweat on a brow furrowed in strategy. Experts including Edward Arnold from the Royal United Services Institute foresee Germany commanding Poland's shield. Supplying the core of Europe's land might on this continent. Anticipate the heavy barrage from Germany and Poland, plus the US. Arnold emphasizes. The rumble of distant thunder rolls closer, the damp scent of anticipation mingling with betrayal's bitter aftertaste, hands clenching in unspoken dread as alliances teeter. This specter of Russian aggression, paired with Germany's imperative to shield allies, ignites the nation's epic military renaissance. Is this awakening too late, or will unexpected rifts in Moscow's plans shatter before Europe's walls? Tension coils tighter as shadows lengthen. What undisclosed fray in the global tapestry will shatter the calm, leaving defenders gasping for breath? Hold on to the edge of uncertainty. Following recent warnings from military experts, Germany recognizes the urgent need to bolster its defense. The fears of a potential Russian invasion loom larger than ever, and Germany is stepping into the spotlight. What shocking plans are fueling this military revival? Could Europe really be on the brink of a new era of confrontation? The answer might change everything we thought we knew about national security. Building on earlier warnings, the threat of Russia's aggression has become impossible to ignore. Sources like the Royal United Services Institute emphasize Germany's expected role in defending Poland and the Baltic states. They're expected to supply most of Europe's land capabilities, an astonishing shift after decades of complacency. The scene is tense, soldiers preparing, machinery humming with anticipation, as Germany edges closer to direct involvement in Europe's fiercest conflicts. Can the country truly transform into the continent's military powerhouse, or will it stumble when the real danger arrives? In 2022, Chancellor Olaf Scholz delivered a landmark speech and electrifying call to arms. He boldly warned Russian President Vladimir Putin not to underestimate Europe's resolve. The message was clear: Germany is committed to defending every inch of NATO territory. In just 2 years, the country launched a colossal $116 billion fund dedicated to military upgrades. The Bundeswehr is now second only to the United States in donations to Ukraine, showing a deepening resolve to confront Russia. But behind this surge lies a shocking question: could Germany's newfound strength ignite a wider conflict? Or is this just a desperate move to deter an aggressive Moscow? The second driving force behind this militarization is the shifting attitude of the United States. President Donald Trump's earlier warning that America would no longer shoulder Europe's defense shocked allies worldwide. He demanded NATO nations spend 5% of their GDP on defense, asserting that current contributions were unfair. Many feared Trump's stance signaled a collapse of American backing. When he publicly clashed with Ukraine's leader in 2022, fears deepened: would U.S. support remain reliable? Europe now faces the harsh reality: they must take responsibility for their security. As Germany accelerates its military plans, the stakes couldn't be higher. Are they preparing for a war that might reshape Europe forever? Or is this a dangerous gamble that could spiral out of control? Following the shift in European defense commitments, traditional allies are taking bold steps to fortify their armies. German Chancellor Merz has spearheaded a dramatic overhaul, breaking free from strict constitutional limits. Now, the country's military can spend without restrictions, aiming for the most formidable force in Europe. The question is, how far will they go to confront the looming threat from the east? 2 years ago, Germany's military budget was shackled by a rule limiting borrowing to just 0.35% of the nation's GDP, an ironclad ceiling since 2009. That meant no room for large-scale military investments. The air was thick with the smell of old paper, the weight of unspent funds pinched the chest. Leaders dreaded the future, knowing any serious rearmament would need radical change. Now, that change has arrived. In March, just before Merz took office, the parliament scrapped those limits entirely. A wave of relief mixed with tension swept through the halls. The nation's path to becoming Europe's strongest military power is clear. This new freedom has unleashed a wave of unprecedented spending.
Plans include purchasing the legendary Leopard tank, used by over 20 countries worldwide. It's the centerpiece of Germany's armored forces, its polished steel hull reflecting a rising sun, ready to push back any threat. Hundreds of billions will flow into fighter jets, artillery, and warships, building a modern force capable of standing against Russia. But what lies beneath this rush for power? Is this just a defensive stance, or are plans for something more provocative lurking just beyond sight? Metz's reforms have set the stage for a military revival. The once neglected Bundeswehr is now transforming into a force that could reshape Europe's security landscape. Every new tank, every missile system, signals a surge of confidence and perhaps, a warning to adversaries. The sense of anticipation is palpable, the air buzzes with the sounds of machinery once silent. The future of the continent hangs in the balance. How far will Germany go to defend its borders, and what are the real consequences for peace throughout Europe? Germany is rapidly transforming its military landscape, swelling its arsenal with unprecedented speed and scale. After decades of relative restraint, the country is now on the verge of unveiling a colossal rearmament program, one that will redefine Europe's security balance. The question is, what is fueling this dramatic shift, and what could it mean for the continent's future? For much of the post-Cold War era, German defense efforts were cautious and restrained. Officially, a focus on diplomacy, rebuilding, and economic growth dominated the national agenda. But recent events have shattered this calm facade. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia ignited a fierce sense of urgency within Germany. No longer content to rely solely on alliances, Berlin has begun a sprawling military expansion, mobilizing resources worth hundreds of billions of euros. It all started with the familiar icon of German defense, the Leopard tank. Despite being a staple for over 20 countries worldwide, for decades, Germany kept its own fleet stagnant. After shipping thousands abroad, Germany's own armored divisions went into hibernation until 2023. Then, a seismic shift. Berlin ordered 105 new Leopard tanks, nearly doubling the nation's active fleet and surpassing the British number of 213. This wasn't just a simple replacement, it was a statement of intent. With the ban lifted on defense spending, further acquisitions are expected to flood in, signaling a relentless push toward military reinforcement. Yet, tanks are just the beginning. In 2024 alone, Germany's defense surge was staggering. From the Kiel Institute's reports, we learn about the highly detailed and massive purchasing spree. Berlin ordered 123 Boxer armored transport vehicles, 265 protected trucks, 19 Skyranger mobile air defense units, 6 frigates, and 2 submarines. These are not mere upgrades, they are strategic moves, each costing billions. With a total expenditure of over $67 billion, this was more than 3 times the combined spending of Britain, France, and Poland that year. And what's next? Germany's ambitions grow even larger. Leaked plans reveal a desire to acquire 600 Skyranger platforms, 20 additional Typhoon fighter jets, 15 F-35-2 stealth aircraft, and a massive fleet of 687 Puma infantry fighting vehicles. The mountain of equipment doesn't stop here: drones, missiles, small arms, landmines, all being modernized at lightning speed. Berlin is gearing up for a potential confrontation with Russia, preparing for every possible scenario. Among the most shocking elements are the missile systems. Germany plans to buy 14 ground-to-air missile launchers from its domestic defense industry, along with around 700 missiles, a clear indication of the scale of modern threats the nation anticipates. The Bundeswehr isn't just expanding, it's transforming completely. This includes a joint plan to replenish depleted artillery stocks, and modernizing reconnaissance drones that can scout vast territories with precision. Every piece of this puzzle is designed to make Germany a powerhouse of military strength. What's behind this all? The shifting geopolitical landscape, fears of wider conflicts, and a realization that relying on alliances is no longer sufficient. As German soldiers prepare for a new era of warfare, the country's battlefield strategies echo louder than ever. All the while, eyes are watching Europe's evolving security architecture, wondering if this rearming frenzy will bring stability or spark new conflicts.
In the shadows of this transformation lie critical questions. Will Germany's military buildup deter aggression, or provoke an arms race? Can Europe's defenses hold against the storm brewing on the eastern horizon?
One thing is certain, history is about to be rewritten, with Germany at the center of a new, uncertain chapter of modern history. Building on the last segment, where Germany fortified its defenses with additional Leopard 2 main battle tanks, missiles, and combat drones, while rearming artillery with a massive joint order for 155mm shells to replace those sent to Ukraine. This Wandel-Durchhandel strategy, transformation through trade, fueled Germany's export boom, expanding east into the European Union, strengthening ties with China, and tapping vast cheap Russian natural gas to drive half the economy on global sales.
Have you ever pondered why a powerhouse like Germany, which avoided military shine for decades, is suddenly unleashing its most explosive industrial revival in generations? Picture factories roaring back to life, the sharp scent of metal shavings cutting through the air, trembling floors under stamping presses. Could this rebirth shatter old alliances and ignite conflicts no one saw coming? At the heart of this rearmament surge lies a pivotal choice, funneling most contracts to homegrown firms, injecting vital energy into Germany's defense sector and skyrocketing stock values for giants like Rheinmetall, the nation's leading arms manufacturer. Shares traded at about $111 apiece just before the Ukraine crisis, but they've surged over $1,966 now, a staggering 17-fold leap. Feel the rush of that market jolt, like a thunderclap echoing through boardrooms. American weaponry takes a back seat, mostly phased out, and even when imported, it's assembled or reworked on German soil. Case in point, the order for 1,000 Patriot missiles, crafted through a Raytheon MBDA teaming, Westphalia, is under the shadow of Rheinmetall's contract to craft fuselages for F-35 jets at a Westphalia site, with echoes of productivity humming in the background. Yet, here's the jaw-dropping twist: the full price tag isn't just staggering, it's a gamble that could redefine who's footing the global security bill. So far, Germany has poured over $57.8 billion into weapons in 2024 alone, poised to add a colossal $436 billion more. That's beyond the $116 billion earmarked by former Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Imagine taxpayers waking up to bills pushing their comfort zones, the weight of government borrowing pressing like an iron trap. That's why ditching the debt brake, a constitutional limit on deficits, wasn't optional, it was essential. On the surface, does this battered economy, scarred from 1990s reunification pains, teetering exports, and double-digit joblessness that branded it Europe's sick man, even stand a chance? The air thick with the grit of recession, the sting of failing products in warehouses, how could it? But under leaders like Gerhard Schroeder and Angela Merkel, a miraculous turnaround blossomed. Robust growth, top-tier exports, and balanced books made Germany the world's envy, all courtesy of Wandel-Durchhandel. What hidden strength propelled this ascent? Exploiting the European Union's eastward stretch, forging deeper bonds with China, and flooding markets with affordable Russian gas, Germany cranked out goods so prolifically that exports powered half its economic engine. The clash of opportunities versus old European labels created a narrative of rebirth. But as defenses multiply, a new conflict brews. Will this export-reliant giant prioritize guns over global trade ties? Can such bold moves truly shield Europe without unraveling the threads of prosperity? And what if Russia's gaze lingers longer? Will Germany's shield hold, or crack under unforeseen pressures? Stay tuned, the stakes rise with every forging hammer's strike. Germany's recent history is a tale of rising power and sudden, shocking decline. For decades, the nation was seen as a model of stability and growth. Under leaders like Schroeder and Merkel, it became an economic titan, fueling global markets with exports and boasting a balanced budget. But all of that changed in 2023 and 2024. Once renowned for economic resilience, Germany slid backward, experiencing its first back-to-back contraction since the early 2000s. The country's once robust economy is now bleeding, nerves frayed by energy shortages and energy costs soaring. The smell of inflation hangs heavy: fuel prices, electricity bills, and everyday essentials all spiking, choking households and industries alike. What caused this dramatic shift? And can Germany bounce back, or is a new, more dangerous chapter beginning? Back when the Cold War ended, Germany was shattered. East and West Germany split apart,
with West Germany rebuilding its military under NATO's watchful eye. The 1955 amendment to the country's basic law created the army, called the Bundeswehr. Conscription returned in 1956, with young men enlisting into divisions ready for joint operations, under the watch of NATO. Tanks, aircraft, and weapons poured in from the US, fueling Germany's military resurgence. By Cold War's end, the nation had grown into a formidable NATO pillar, peaking at nearly 500,000 soldiers. But that strength was short-lived. Post-Cold War, Germany scaled back drastically. By the early 2020s, their military personnel had shrunk to just 180,000, nearly 3 times smaller than before. Defense budgets plummeted from 4.9% of GDP in 1963 to just 1.1% in 2005. Tanks sat idle, aircraft aged in hangars, and artillery pieces gathered dust. During the 2014 NATO exercise, troops had to use broomsticks instead of guns, the equipment's like an embarrassing symbol of decline. Then, Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 jolted Europe's security fabric. Germany stepped into the spotlight as one of Ukraine's biggest supporters, funneling over $55 billion in aid, more than $46 billion military. Support shifted from mere aid to a clear warning: Germany is ramping up for confrontation. And the warning signs are everywhere. NATO's leaders warn Russia might strike within 5 years, through Belarus, the Baltic states, or Ukraine itself. Germany's response? A massive military buildup and expansion that has stunned even seasoned analysts. The 45th Armored Brigade is now stationed in Lithuania, marking a historic shift: long-term deployment for the first time since World War II. This force, comprising thousands of soldiers, marches into action on the border of potential conflict zones. They've secured land without charge, built schools for military families, and are preparing for the worst. Meanwhile, on the Polish border, German forces are just 357 miles from Belarus, close enough to feel the pulse of an imminent clash. If Russia pushes westward, Germany will be front and center. Experts say Berlin's role will be pivotal in defending Poland and the Baltic states. They'll provide most of Europe's land firepower, tanks, artillery, and troops. The threat is real. With fears rising, Chancellor Scholz issued a stark warning to not underestimate NATO's resolve to build a formidable, cutting-edge military force. And under Friedrich Merz's leadership, Germany is unleashing an unprecedented surge in military spending, billions flowing into new tanks, aircraft, ships, and tech. The iconic Leopard 2 tank, used worldwide, is just one piece of a massive rearmament initiative. But what lies beneath this aggressive ramp-up? Is Germany preparing for war, or simply safeguarding its future? Their plans threaten to reshape Europe's security landscape, pushing boundaries and provoking fierce questions. Could this new militarization lead Europe into chaos? Or is it the only way to prevent catastrophe? As the sound of armored vehicles rumbles closer, the question remains: who will blink first in this game of power, fear, and survival? Germany's story is one of dramatic transformation, once a defeated foe, now poised on the brink of a military resurgence that could reshape Europe's future. For decades, this nation played it safe, avoiding the strong military stance it once had. But recent signals show a startling shift: Germany is quietly, yet firmly, turning the tables. The question is, why now? What hidden forces are pushing Germany to rebuild its war machine after nearly 70 years? In a startling move, Germany has gone from cautious restraint to ambitious expansion. For the first time since the early 1990s, the nation's defense budget will skyrocket, with plans for its biggest military overhaul in modern history. Could this be Europe's hidden spark for conflict? The air hums with the sound of change, metal clanking, engines roaring as plans are set in motion. The goal? Transform the army into the strongest force in Europe. But what threat is so urgent that it demands such extraordinary measures? Flashback to a cold, damp 1945 evening. Germany's defeat was sealed with the crackle of artillery and the scent of burnt earth. The country was shattered, demilitarized, divided into two. The memory of the past haunted every decision. West Germany, emerging from ashes, quickly rebuilt a military rearmed under NATO's watch, with tanks rolling onto assembly lines and soldiers trained for a new world order. But that peace was fragile.
The Cold War froze the conflict, yet beneath the surface, Germany prepared silently, always watching.
Then came the fall of the Berlin Wall, ending a chapter in history. Germany transformed into a shining NATO pillar, swelling to nearly 500,000 troops at its peak. But as the Cold War ended, the nation shrank its military, sometimes by half, sometimes more. Weapons were sold off, soldiers laid off. By the early 2020s, the army was a shadow of its former self. Equipment aged, readiness waned, and equipment like battle tanks were replaced by broomsticks during drills, a stark reminder of neglect. The scent of rust filled the air around their disarmed carriers. And then, 2022 changed everything. Russia invaded Ukraine, ripping apart Europe's fragile security fabric. Germany's role shifted sharply from supporter to frontline defender. It became Europe's largest supporter of Ukraine, pumping over $55 billion into aid, most of it military. The streets buzzed with urgency, tanks being prepared, troops training, defenses being rebuilt. The once slow Germany was now racing against time. Europe's security was at stake. Could this rising tide of military strength be enough? Leaders warned Russia might strike NATO borders within 5 years. The threat? An unexpected invasion through Belarus into Poland, or across the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. Germany's response was swift. It stationed a long-term armored brigade in Lithuania, something unseen since World War II. Thousands of soldiers, fortified bases, German schools for families. Germany was now deeply embedded in Eastern Europe's defenses. But the border with Poland is just 357 miles from Belarus, a blink of an eye in military terms. If Russia pushes through Poland, Germany's capital could be the next target. The stakes have never been higher. Experts say Germany's role is pivotal in defending Poland and the Baltics. Its army is expected to provide the core land capabilities for Europe's front line. The powerful Leopard 2 tank, used worldwide, is now a symbol of this reawakened strength. Yet, questions remain: can Germany's military truly stand ready? Will its massive investments deter or provoke more conflict? The once quiet nation is now at a turning point, facing an uncertain, possibly explosive future. In a dramatic speech, Chancellor Olaf Scholz warned Russia's leader not to underestimate the collective strength of NATO allies. Germany committed to building an army capable of defending every inch of Europe. Within 2 years, a $116 billion fund was created for military upgrades. And the US's warnings echoed: European nations must bear more responsibility, rebuild their defenses, and pay their dues. The old rules, limited budgets and reliance on American support, are breaking down. Germany's debt rules, set in 2009, restricted its military spending. Now, those limits are gone. Chancellor Friedrich Merz has thrown open the gates: massive tanks, aircraft, ships, all lined up for deployment. Equipment costs soar billions for new weaponry and war machines. The Leopard 2 tank, a marvel of engineering, is just the beginning. So, what does this all mean? Is Germany preparing for an inevitable confrontation? Will this new military push spark a wider conflict across Europe? The shadows of history loom large. The nation that once brought the world to its knees now stands at the crossroads, ready to rebuild its military power, perhaps, for war. As the plans unfold and armies prepare, one question remains: are we witnessing the beginning of a new era of conflict, or merely the cautious start of a peace that could soon shatter? Germany is standing at a turning point. After decades of cautious military posture, a seismic shift is underway. Despite the burden on its economy and soaring debt, Germany is boldly rearming, eyeing its strongest military buildup in 70 years. What's fueling this massive transformation? Hidden behind the scenes is a daring strategy to prepare for the inevitable, a confrontation with Russia. Once divided after the Cold War, Germany was demilitarized and split into East and West. West Germany rebuilt its armed forces in the 1950s, joining NATO with pride. The Bundeswehr was born, replete with conscripts, tanks, and fighters. Over the years, the country's military grew strong, peaking during the Cold War with nearly 500,000 personnel. But after the Cold War's end, Germany embarked on a different path: downsizing, slashing budgets, and mothballing equipment. By the early 2020s, the German military was barely a shadow of its former self, fewer tanks, aircraft, and troops. Equipment was rusting away, and shortages plagued the armed forces during NATO exercises.
The background sounds of machinery, once roaring at full tilt, faded into silence.
Yet, everything changed in 2022 when conflict erupted in Ukraine.
Russia's invasion shattered Europe's fragile peace.
Germany suddenly became a key supporter of Ukraine, pouring over $55.5 billion into aid.
But the real game-changer came under Chancellor Merz. The focus shifted dramatically. Germany, long hesitant, now accelerates plans for unprecedented military expansion. Leaders warn that Russia might strike within 5 years, targeting Poland, the Baltic states, or even Moldova, using Belarus as a gateway.
German troops are already stationed abroad, with the 45th Armored Brigade deployed in Lithuania, the first long-term combat force on foreign soil since World War II.
As soldiers drill in snow and mud, the question arises, how far will this rearmament go?
To defend against Russian advances, Germany aims to increase its personnel by 40%, reaching around 260,000 soldiers.
Yet, recruiting remains a thorny issue.
Voluntary enlistment alone may not suffice, sparking internal disputes and public resistance.
Many Germans oppose rearmament, fearing a return to conflict.
Polls indicate that only about half support the plan, while others fear military escalation. The political landscape is polarized, populations divided between pro- and anti-rearmament factions, with some questioning if Germany is treading dangerous territory.
Despite political hurdles, Merz pushes forward.
He scrapped previous fiscal limits, pouring billions into tanks, artillery, fighter jets, and warships, modernizing the Bundeswehr for the tough realities ahead. Tanks like the Leopard 2, used worldwide, are being upgraded to confront the Russian threat head-on.
Every new deployment, every weapon system, echoes with a resolve: Germany is preparing for war.
What lies ahead is uncertain.
Will Germany truly confront its past and fully rearm? Or will political resistance and economic challenges hold it back?
As the country braces for the worst, one thing is clear: Europe's security is hanging in the balance, and Germany might just be the spearhead in a coming storm.
Summary: 4 decades.
Germany adopted a cautious approach to its military, but recent global tensions have sparked a dramatic reversal. Reeling from the threat of war with Russia, the nation is undertaking its largest military expansion in 70 years. Despite domestic resistance and financial risks, Germany aims to become Europe's most powerful military force, preparing for a future of heightened conflict and unpredictable dangers.